Let's get salty!
Hey everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video. And just the other day we did the top 10 most hated cards in Hearthstone history, and read through the comments and man did I miss a bunch. So I thought, you know what, 10 doesn't quite capture the hatred that players have for certain cards, and well, let's make another top 10 list of 10 more of the most hated cards in Hearthstone history. And these will be based pretty much entirely from what I read in the comments. There was a lot that were repeated, and there was a couple that I thought definitely should be on the list. So let's do it. Let's take a look at 10 more. So starting off at number 10, we have Edwin Van Cleef, the recently nerfed rogue legendary, now 4 mana, was 3/3, but this guy stole more games than any other card in Hearthstone history. Basically an auto include in almost every rogue deck forever, and still is at 4 mana. You're still seeing it played on turn 1 because of cards like Foxy Fraud and Shadow Step. The card is busted even at 4 and has just infuriated so many players. Well, turn 2, turn 3, Giant Edwin, I lose the game, it's over. And that never really feels good for any player, unless I guess you're the one playing the card. At number 9, this didn't make my list because I wasn't playing Hearthstone when this card was unnerfed, but that's the Undertaker, the Naxxramas 1 mana 1/2 neutral minion that would gain +1/+1 for every Death Rattle minion played. And Undertaker Hunter dominated the game for a pretty long time, was one of the most broken decks in Hearthstone history, and finally got nerfed to that it would only gain +1 attack, effectively killing the card. But yeah, this card would just snowball out of control. If you couldn't kill it on turn 1 or 2, you were done. It would get ridiculously big. You basically have a Yeti on turn 2 and 3. It was just, back then, that was ridiculous, before Rush was a mechanic, before you had really good tempo removals and all of that. It was quite the juggernaut and still gives a lot of very veteran players PTSD to this day. At number 8, we have a pretty recent addition to this list at Mind Render Ellucia, originally 2 mana, now 3 mana. And it's a priest legendary that will basically switch hands and decks with your opponent for a turn. And it's just a really unfun card that the priest opponent plays Ellucia and gets to play and waste all of your stuff. And then you're screwed and you're stuck with their useless like removal or whatever. It's just a super unfun card. Nothing anybody ever wants to face. Blizzard, why did you make Mind Render? It's super frustrating. Even at 3 mana, it's super frustrating. I can't stand the card. I hate the card. It should have been on the first list, but hey, we're getting it right now. It's on this list. At number 7, we have the neutral minion Mind Control Tech, relatively recently Hall of Famed. 3 mana 3/3. If your opponent controls 4 or more minions, you get to steal one randomly, and it was always the giant one. You have an 8/8 and like 3 1/1s. They're gonna take that 8/8 every time. And it was just one of those cards that would punish you for going wide, and the RNG aspect of which minion would they steal could be absolutely game swinging, game breaking, and just left a lot of players super frustrated to the point where it was taken out of Arena entirely, and then, as I mentioned, Hall of Fame, and no longer exists in Standard. And thankfully, doesn't see much play in Wild. At number 6, we have the original unnerfed rogue quest, the Caverns Below. This thing was unbelievable out of the gate, day 1, just broken. You can complete this quest in like turns 2 and 3. You get 5/5s for the rest of the game. And don't forget, back then, prep was unnerfed. It would make your spells cost 3 less. So for 2 mana, you could play your quest, complete it. Just unbelievably busted. It's a card that actually made Brian Kibler swear on stream. That takes something. That takes a truly hated card, and the Caverns Below is hated by many players, and definitely is warranted to be on this list. At number 5, we have the Priest epic spell, Psychic Scream. 7 mana, you shuffle all minions into your opponent's deck, and it's the most busted board clear, I believe, in Hearthstone history. The fact that it clears everything, including death rattles, and not only does it clear it, but you disrupt your opponent's draws, making their top decks most often very bad for the rest of the game. Super ridiculous, and it was introduced while Big Priest and Razakus Priest were very strong in Standard, and while Psychic Scream has been basically an auto-include in every Priest deck that's not like a combo Priest style deck until the end of time, because it's just so broken. It's so infuriating that, yeah, turn 7, you're gonna get Psychic Scream, but oh wait, now we have Palm Reading, so maybe on turn 6 or 5 you can get Psychic Screamed, and it's just not fun at all to get screamed, and still can't believe they made this card. I still cannot believe it's 7 mana when you compare it to a card like Twisting Nether. It's just absurd. At number 4, I have a combination of 2 cards, and again, it's Priest hate, but Priest deserves it, I don't care. And that's Raza and Anduin. This combination of cards has dominated, well, it did dominate Standard for a good amount of time before it got nerfed, dominated Wild before it got nerfed, and now it's absolutely dominated Wild since Raza got its nerf reverted. Just a ridiculous combination that just leads for infinite burst, basically creates a complete sense of hopelessness once it's online, unless you happen to have like Sir Finley and Grizzled Wizard tech in your deck, you're pretty much screwed, and it's just the bane of many Wild players' existences to this day, and it's just such a freaking pit of frustration that I just, why did they revert that nerf, Blizzard? Why? Just make Raza cost one. I know a lot of people love Raza as well. It's a polarizing one, but man, I'm just so sick of getting pew-pewed to death by Priest. It's too much for me. At number 3, we have Secret Mage. Just Secret Mage. Particularly, you know, the Wild version where you have Explosive Runes, you have Counterspell, Kirin Tor, Mage, Cabal Lackey, you have 0 mana 5/5s, you have Alunetha, which doesn't even see play anymore. It's just an absurd deck that's been really powerful in Wild for a very, very, very long time that a ton of people hate, and one of the main reasons is you just can't do anything. There's no counterplay. You know, if you want to play a minion, oh, it blows up to runes. You want to play a spell, it gets countered by counterspell. You want to kill one of their minions, it gets duplicated, and then you have to deal with 2 more. You deal lethal damage, and Iceblock prevents it. It's just one of the more frustrating archetypes to play because there's just so limited counterplay to it, and is very hated by the Wild community for very good reasons, unless you're the lead card designer. He really loves Secret Mage. At number 2, I had to put this in its own separate slot, even though you could slot it into Secret Mage, but that is Iceblock, the Mage legendary, or not legendary, but epic spell that makes you immune from fatal damage for a turn, effectively buying you an extra turn, and it enabled decks like Freeze Mage, Quest Mage, Secret Mage, a Burn Mage, a million different Mage decks, and it's one of the more frustrating things that you have the board. You have this giant board, like 1 billion damage on board. Well, they have Iceblock up, and then they just burn you out the next turn. You can't do anything unless you run like Secret Hate, like Kazan Mystic or Eater of Secrets, but then you gotta run a bad card in your deck, and that's a really frustrating thing. And Iceblock was Hall of Famed for this reason, and then reintroduced as Timeout and Cloak of Shadows. Why? But anyways, yeah, Iceblock, just a very frustrating card, just not allowing you to kill your opponent for basically no good reason outside of just this secret is utter bullshit. And before we get to the number 1 most hated card, well, I guess 20th card, whatever you want to qualify as the other most hated cards, we have a few honorable mentions here. I have Crackle, the Shaman burn spell that does either 3 to 6 damage, and basically the RNG variance of this card is infuriating. Whether, you know, you get 6 and you win, or you take 6 and you lose, it could just be brutal, and that swing is just a frustrating experience. Just the wrong kind of RNG to slap on a card. Thankfully, they haven't really re-explored this type of thing since, except they did later on in the same expansion in GVG with Implosion. Same type of deal, 4 mana Warlock spell. You either deal 2 to 4 damage, and then you summon an imp for each. And if you got 4 damage and 4 imps, it could be game winning. If you got 2 damage and 2 imps, it could be game losing, especially when you had cards like Knife Juggler, which were really meta at the time. You were missing out on an incredible amount of damage. So it's one of those game swinging cards, totally due to RNG, that just led to players just pulling their hair out, and why I'm partially bald. And the last honorable mention, I put this on my most loved cards list, but I had a lot of people complain in the comments for that one, so I'm going to put it on there. Frostlich Jaina. I absolutely love Jaina. I know a lot of people that do, but also people that absolutely hate it, knowing that, well, they're just going to get everything they turn into a sheep, into a water elemental, or infinite lifesteal. There's just this hopelessness against Frostlich Jaina. So a lot of players feel frustrated facing this card. I love playing it, but I threw it out there to give you guys a break. The ones that complained about Frostlich Jaina, well, she's on this list too. The number 1 most hated card on the second list of most hated cards is Jade Idol. There was so many comments about Jade Idol, and yeah, I agree. This card infuriated me to the end of time when it came out. I like playing control decks, and this negated all control strategies, infinite value, nothing you could do about it, and it was just frustrating. It led to Day 9's amazing summon another large green man rant.
Will this turn I'll summon a larger and larger man, which will allow me later on to summon an even larger man. Yeah, no, your decks aren't cool. They don't take finesse. your brain is small and both your hands suck.
You got to look that up if you haven't seen it. It's beautiful. Day 9 is a legend. And yeah, it eventually led to the printing of a card named Skulking Geist, which allow you to actually have counterplay to Jade Idol. And when you have to print a card specifically to counter another card, you know your design is a little bit flawed. Thankfully, Jade Idol is not too prevalent and wild these days. Big green men just don't really do what they used to do. They don't have Rush, Lifesteal, or Taunt, so they kind of get blown out. But it's still meta. It still picks up every once in a while in Wild, and people just have nightmares about infinite large green men. So let me know in the comments below, were there even more cards that I missed? Do we need to make another list? I hope not. I hope we don't hate that many cards in the game that we do love and we do enjoy and play. At least I do play every single day. So if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day. Stay salty, my friends.